All right. Hopefully, this is working a little bit better this time, and I'm not talking to myself. I was just told that I've been talking for the last 5 minutes to myself. Welcome back to Coding at Home. Yeah, we're going to try to bring you in. We're going to skip right to the iPad today. How about that? Just having technical difficulties all over the shops. Okay, so where we were yesterday was we started building our own app. Now it could turn into a game. It could be an app. We're not really sure. We're sort of playing around with it and seeing what might be interesting to us. So we started out with the idea that we're going to build an aquarium. If I hit run my code, I'll see the background that we picked. So we set a background on the space that was kind of close to water. We added a fish. This is fish 1. We made it a button. And then we added another button that was dedicated to moving the fish. Okay, and we just had it blow up, and we'll see why in a second. So with this, we can go in a lot of different directions. Some of the two of the students downstairs decided to make it into a game. We have one application where the aquarium turns into kind of a dangerous aquarium because we have a whale or a snake, depending on which version of the game you're looking at. We'll go chase the fish, and when they connect with each other, you get a school of attack fish that are going to go get the whale or snake. And then in another game, somebody decided to go in a different direction and made a space scene where we've got a rocket ship and we've got enemy ships. And your goal is to try to make as many moves as possible. A little bit like Space Invaders or Missile Command or Asteroids. So you could get inspired in the same way and take this template that we've created and really go to town with it and come up with your own idea. There's lots of concepts that we'll go over today and kind of cool tricks that you'll be able to use when you're working on your own game. All right, so what we've done, we didn't do too much in the 5 minutes I was talking before we were actually streaming. But what we did do is for those people who weren't here yesterday, we have this new app at home template that you can get from the Code Hub feed. So if you go to see all for playgrounds and you go down to the Code Hub feed, there's a new app at home template you can grab. It's basically the camera create starting point from Apple with a few things removed so that we're not asked to if we can access the camera or if we can use photos, because we don't need those things necessarily for our application. All right, so once you've got that downloaded, you're going to open that up, your app at home playground. Now I've renamed this. It was called template because what you'll see when you start up is you'll see a page that looks like this. You'll have a space, and then you'll have a line where we add a component to this space at a certain point. Now, this won't run because I don't have a component defined. This is just a placeholder, and this point is just a placeholder. But this is what we started with yesterday. So if I go back up to the menu here, I'm going to select my Coding at Home Aquarium. It was actually called template, and I decided I didn't like that. So I tapped on here. I said, you know what, this is going to be a real app that I want to build. So I just hit edit, and I'm able to change the name. I can reorder these pages. Maybe if it's a progression of a game, or if you want to save a copy, you can copy and paste this code into a different page and then save that off. So you could, when you change your game from being about a snake chasing fish to a whale chasing fish, you could actually keep both copies and see which version people like better. So I've renamed my playground. I'm going to go back in here. We've written some code to set a background image. That's new. We've added a left button and a fish, which is also a button. We've defined some sizes that we might want to use for our fish. We've styled our components. We added an image for our fish. We saw that the left button didn't show up because we set a border color but hadn't set a border width. And then we styled it a little more to make sure the border showed up. We set a title for the button, so we knew which direction it was going to push the fish. Then we added them to the space. This is our function. that's how we're connected to the button, right? Down here we have left button pressed. Property is connected to the moveLeft function, so it sends through a pulse. And then we have some logic in here. So originally we just did this. We just moved the fish 20 pixels to the left every single time you press that L button, right? Because we subtract 20. This is the negative direction on the x-axis. So we subtract 20 from the current X position. Your head might be exploding a little bit here, but I really like this here and doing this kind of stuff in code because you can feel it. If you decided to change this to a plus and run it, and I hit my L button, I can see that, oh, actually, cool, I'm moving the other way on the x-axis now. Just by that one little change. This is a great thing about playgrounds. They're really easy to play around with things and experiment and see what affects what. All right, so this is our move, and then we added some logic here to say, okay, so we're going to check and see if the X position of the fish is less than minus 50. So minus 50, say, is about here. If it's on this side of that value, we're going to scale the fish up to 40. Scale the fish up 40%, times 40. That's it's too big. Let's try running it with a more sensible number. Okay, that's cool. We've got a little puffer fish going on because I just multiplied the size by 4. I can play around with that number again and see if see what number looks best with the design that I want for my application. Now, maybe what I want to have happen though is I want to make this into like a treasure map kind of aquarium. And what I want to do as the developer is I want to say, hey, let's place treasures around here at different points. Well, how would we do that randomly? And let's do it here. We'll actually use the same logic. Instead of having this fish become a puffer fish or just become a puffer fish, we'll also make something appear. So we'll add our next line. We need to create a component, and we can either create it here in this function, but maybe I want to access it up higher as well. So let's do this. Let's create a new component. So I need a variable. I'm going to call it treasure. I'm going to spell it right. And then let's see, I'm just going to make this an image view. I'm not going to make it a button this time. All right, there's our treasure. We're going to style our component, so I'm actually going to add an image to that treasure. Again, trying to spell it right. I'm struggling with spelling treasure today. We'll add an image. Let's see. Well, that's not bad. That star is not bad. Actually, let's use this star. Okay, cool. So I've got my treasure style. I think that'll be good for me. I'm not going to add it to the space because I don't want it to show up until the fish gets to that particular point. All right, so let's see. So I have my fish scale 1. This is where I want to add it to the space. I don't think I want my star to do anything else. So let's see, we're going to add it to the space. So what we need to do is space dot. And we'll look for add here. And we'll add it, and we'll also give it a size too. So let's add our treasure. There's our treasure. Now for point, I want this to be a little bit exciting because in games, things don't always appear in the same spot. That would be that would be an easy game for you to figure out, right? If things always appeared in the same spot. I want to have a dynamic point. I want it to show up in a sort of random location every time. So let's write a little bit of code to figure out what point we might put this thing at. So there's a really cool function on some of our types. So ints and doubles, you can ask them, hey, give me a random number between a certain range of numbers. So what I could do is I could say, actually, I'm going to try to be as explicit as possible so I know what's going on here. I'm going to call it random X position. And I'm going to set it equal to, now because it's a method on a type, we have to use the capital D for double. And we're going to start typing random. And you can see we have two options show up here in the autocomplete. So we can have a closed range or a range. But they both start with the parameter label in. So let's just pick range double for kicks. And then we're going to say, all right, so we know that our coordinates here are minus 500 and plus 500. So we want to have our star show up somewhere within the screen. So let's give a range of minus, say, 450. And then a range you do like this, just like we do with our for loops, to 450. So I'm going to get some number back that's between minus 450 and 450. So that's for my random X position. And then let's do the same thing with our Y position. So we're going to do let, and we're going to say random Y position. And as you get more comfortable with this, you'll say, oh yeah, of course, my random Y position, or if I talk about X position, I'm talking about where it is horizontally across the screen. And when I talk about Y positions, I'm talking about up and down on the screen. So there's random Y position. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to get a double dot random. And I'm going to do the same thing because I want it to be somewhere on the screen. And I know that the coordinates of the screen are minus 500 to positive 500 on both the X and Y axis. By the way, if you're doing this at home and you're a student in a classroom, I don't care what grade range, and your teachers are asking for work, this is excellent stuff to show to your teachers. The X and Y, coordinate plane things are brilliant to bring up with your teacher. You are actually learning, even though it may be more fun than you would associate with learning. If you want to record a video of this, you go up to the three dots over here. You hit record movie, and you just hit this button here to record your code. You can actually, sometimes it'll crash, no big deal. You hit that record button, and then you can actually scroll through your code, and that'll get captured in the movie. And when you hit run my code, that'll also get captured in the movie. So they'll see your whole screen as you're working. And sometimes Swift Playgrounds will crash. That happens. All right, so we have our treasure image. If we go back down, we were just working on this here. We got our random X position. We got our random Y position. We added this treasure. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a point. So we'll tap on point right here. We use the parentheses, and we're going to use the double version. Now, it didn't matter if you tapped on the int version as well. Swift is smart enough to say, oh, you know what? This X value that you're handing me is a type double. And remember, a double is just a decimal number. So 1.0 or 450.0 or 0.1. All right, so I'm going to use the random X position here. And I'm going to use the random Y position here. And then let's give our treasure a size. Actually, let's give, you know what? We have that medium size defined already. Let's use the medium size for kicks. So when we hit this case, when the fish position on the x-axis is less than minus 50, so when it's over here on the other side of the minus 50, the fish is going to scale up. We're going to get a random X position, a random Y position. We're going to add the treasure at that random point with a medium size. And then we're going to change the position of the fish. So let's try running our code and see what we have. And I'm going to expand this so we can see it in full screen. So we'll hit left. So that was minus 20. So now it's at minus 20 because it was 0 to start with. Now it's at minus 40. Now it's at minus 60. Oh, now we're greater than minus 50. And my treasure showed up there. Now if I stop and run it again, remember the star showed up down here. We'll hit left, 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 left. Now the star showed up there. This is really handy, especially if maybe if you're doing a treasure map, this would be kind of fun. If you're doing enemies for your fish, I don't know why your fish have enemies in the aquarium, but if they do, great. Or if they have friends in the aquarium, you can randomly place them around the space just by using that random method on the double type. All right, so we're going to go back. Instead of closing our playground, we're going to open it back up again. All right, cool. So now we've got our treasure showing up. That's one thing we could do. Now the reason why, so we were subtracting 20, but why were we allowed to do, so if we test our code, now we're at 0.0. My X position is going to be minus 20 when I hit this. So I shouldn't scale up then. Now it's minus 40. Now it's minus 60. Can you tell me why, or can you tell yourself why, maybe you're not going to be able to yell loud enough, why this didn't get run? Because I'm at minus 60 now. And that's definitely less than minus 50. If you remember from our reading code video, the way this gets run is when I tap that button, I come in here and I say, hey, what's the X position of the fish? And when it asks it first, it says, oh, I'm at minus 40. So it says, well, that's not less than minus 50. So I'm going to skip all of this, jump down here, and then change my position. So now at this stage, my X position is minus 60. So it's not until the next time I push the button that will explode. And maybe that's what you want, but this is a handy way to debug. Doing this, walking through the code like this, will help you debug any issues you might have when something's not happening when you expect it to happen. All right, so we've got a random treasure showing up when we hit a certain point. We could do another thing here. Let's add another creature on here, and when we touch the other creature, we're gonna do something. Maybe we'll have our fish disappear. And what we're also going to do is we're going to add a label, because when our fish disappears and when we hit it, we want to have it say game over. So let's see. Let's add our second fish. So we'll call it fish 2. We'll be very clever with our names. We'll also make this a button. Now the only reason I'm making this a button is because maybe I want to later on add a function to these buttons, so that I can connect the press property on these buttons off to another function. I know some other people wrote their game so that it was the fish. Instead of tapping on an L button over here, you tapped on the fish and they moved left. That's another interesting way to do it too. All right, so let's see. So I have my fish 2 button. And in fact, let's do something with that. So we have our fish 2. We're going to give it a different image so that they look a bit different. So fish 2 image equals, and then we'll use the image literal. Let's find a good fish for this. Not that guy, not the snake. Oh, this is a cool looking fish. Let's use this whale. Okay, so cool. So we've got it styled. We've got an image showing up. We'll also add this fish 2 to the space. So we'll do space dot add. We're going to add fish 2, and then we're going to add it a point. I'm going to add it on the same X and Y axis. I could add it up here. But as we only have a left button hooked up right now, maybe I'll put it over here so we can reach it. So we're going to give it a point of x is going to be minus, let's say 70, and then y is going to be 0. Okay, so if I run my code, I should see my second fish. Okay, cool. I can hit. Oh, nice. And now, actually, this is a really cool function that I maybe hadn't thought of, is that as I'm hitting my L button, because it's always less than minus 50 at this stage, because if I keep moving left, I place this thing here at random points as I keep moving. And unfortunately, my fish has gone way past the edge of the screen. All right, so let's bring our code back up. So that's maybe a bug that we want to fix. Maybe we want to add another bit of logic here to say, right, because we're going left, we'll add another if statement here. We'll say if fish 1 position and we don't want the x property to be greater than minus 500. So actually we have to use less than here, less than minus 500. We'll drag that in there, and oh, actually, you know what? Maybe that's not my logic. Maybe I want it to be if my fish position is greater than minus 500, then I am allowed to move. Otherwise, I can't move. And in fact, I'd probably give a bit of padding to myself. So let's do 450. I like keeping things within our bounds. So let's try running that now. So what I've said here is I've done a test first. This is my sort of special action that's going to happen when I'm moving left, my hidden action that's like, oh, cool, if I'm further than minus 50, I'll scale the fish up and then I'll add random treasures to the screen. And then after that, I say, well, if the fish position on the x-axis is greater than negative 450, so if it's on this side of negative 450, then I'll let them move, keep moving left. So let's try moving left. I'll expand this so we can see the whole screen. Left. There we go. And if I keep hitting that button, I'll still have my star showing up, but my fish is stopped. So maybe what I want to do there is say, actually, do you know what? I want to add an else clause. And I want to have the fish rotate like it's going to turn around and come back. So let's do fish 1 dot rotation equals, we'll do 180. Well, let's see what happens there. Off we go. We've just scaled up. Okay, cool. Now it looks like I'm coming back. Not bad. Now let's do something with this other fish. We want to do something when we get to this point. So far we're just testing when we get to fish 1's position. Let's see what we can do here with our other fish. So we'll do, this is all the stuff that's handled, and maybe I would have a comment here saying, you know, handle the, we'll add a little comment. We'll just say fish 1 actions here, and it's all based on just where fish 1 is. And then down here we would say we'll check for fish 2. So we know that any of the code after this is going to be looking for fish 2 and maybe performing some action if we see fish 2 here. All right, so let's see. I will say we need an if statement, right? So let's grab an if statement out. So we're going to check our own position. So fish 1 dot position dot x. And then let's see, we want to test to see if we're near the other fish's position. So we might need to do something like this. So we might need to use our knowledge of logical operators here. And we would have to do something like if we run our code. Oh, here, we'll comment this out for, actually, we'll comment all of this out for 1 second. If we look, when we want to check to see where something is, we have to consider the width of our obstacle, say, and then also its position. So if we look at it, the width of this guy is, let's say we gave it did we give that one a medium size? No, we gave it no size. We let it have its own kind of intrinsic size. So say it's 40 width. Well, the X position refers to where it is in the middle of our button. But then we have all this other piece of the image over here, which is half of the width. So we'd have to figure out, well, what's half of our width? Okay, well, in this case, it's going to be 20. That's kind of handy. So when this fish, which is also, we have to add half of its width to its X position, when the X position plus half its width gets within that X position minus half its width, then that's when we know that they've kind of collided. So that's what we're going to work on a little bit tomorrow. We'll use our logical operators to try to figure out if we can detect when one of our components has touched another component. So here, let's leave a little comment for tomorrow. We'll say check for collisions. Now, before we go, you're not off the hook yet. I talked briefly about making the component itself a button and having that move when you tap it. Well, what if we had our whale button, our fish 2, actually perform some kind of action? Well, we can do that by going down here, defining a function. I'm going to call it fish 2 pressed behavior. And it's going to be a function. So I'm going to tap on the func keyword here. And we're going to call it press whale. Now we want to, just like we did with our moveLeft function, we want to have a parameter that looks like this. So pulse. So we need to tap on our brace and add a parameter, and we're going to call it pulse, and it's going to be of type pulse. Now, just for kicks, what we're going to do is we are going to just quickly say fish 2. We're going to create a little variable here, and we'll have it alternate, okay? I'm going to call it is ballooned equals false. So if we press on the whale, it's going to blow up to a larger scale. And if we press on the whale again, it's going to shrink back down to its regular size. So let's do that. So we created a variable that's a Boolean. And we're going to say if is ballooned. And then we need our braces. We're going to do fish2 dot scale. Now remember, we want to change it because it is ballooned right now. It's larger than it was. So we'll change it back down to a scale of 1. And then we're going to set our is ballooned property to false. This is important to remember because if we don't change it, then we'll always fall into the else clause here because it'll always be false. So now I'm going to tap on the braces, add an else statement. So when it's not ballooned, we're going to say fish2. That's when we want it to balloon up. Scale equals, and we'll do 6. So it's fairly dramatic. And then we'll also toggle is ballooned. So we'll set that to true. Now if I run my code and I tap on the blue whale, nothing happens because what did I not do yet? I didn't wire it up yet. So let's wire this one up. We're going to call it fish2.pressed property because it's a button. We're going to connect it to our press whale button. So I just hit the autocompletes. That was kind of handy. You can see this one looks different than that. I can delete this parentheses and pulse because Swift is smart enough to know that, oh yeah, this is the function I want to send the message to. But I'll leave it in because autocomplete added it for me. So I'll hit run my code. Now if I press on the blue whale, okay, he's ballooned. If I press on him again, he shrinks back down. Maybe that's what you're going to do. If you build an aquarium and it's not necessarily a game, it's just something you want to stare at with your fish, maybe that's all you need, is something that will make the fish move a bit randomly when you touch them. Now we'll go back over this code again a little bit tomorrow. We'll stick on this playground again for one more day. We'll add the ability to check for collisions. We'll add an ability here. Let's make a little note. We want to show a game over label. In case we make a game, because we have a component called a label on here that we can set text on. And we can give it the same thing, just like we've placed all these other elements. We can just provide a point and say, yep, draw my label at a given point. But we'll work through some of this stuff tomorrow, and we'll have a pretty impressive looking app for 3 days worth of work. It's only been about an hour and a half, maybe total, by the end of it. But we'll try it out. All right, thanks for coming and playing with us today. This is a lot of code. If you want this code, maybe what we'll do is I'll add this as an example in the playground that you can download from the Code Hub. I'll give you an update on the status of that tomorrow, whether or not I managed to get it in there. And yeah, happy coding. We'll see you tomorrow.